Baitcasters at first glance may seem rather intimidating. Really doesn't have to be. Welcome to Baitcasting 101. A baitcaster is kind of like a combination between a spinning reel and a closed face push button reel. It has a few little differences to it. The primary difference between a baitcaster and any other reel is that the spool is sideways, and that the spool itself turns to release fishing line. There are only a few things you need to know about a baitcaster in order to be able to begin using one. Now, one of the most important things I'm going to tell you about learning a baitcasting reel is that you aren't going to learn it from watching this video or any other video. Baitcasting isn't something that you can just watch and replicate. It doesn't work that way. You have to learn it through patience and over time. With that being said, I can give you some of my best tips for if you're starting off with a baitcaster, what you should do and things to avoid some major headaches. All right, first things first. When you have your baitcaster spooled up and you're sitting here looking at all these knobs and dials, don't put too much focus on them. You can generally take the setting on the side, stick it somewhere between the max and min level, and you're usually pretty safe to fish a wide variety of lures with that. So you don't have to worry too much about the adjustment here. Now the drag, the star wheel here, you do want to tighten it down a bit so you can't just freely pull line off of your spool. Because if you can freely pull line, then you'll never be able to set the hook on a fish, much less reel them in. Now, beginning with this, whatever lure you're using, you want it to have an appropriate fall. So by that, you can see my frog there is just slowly starting to go. You can see the spool slowly starting to turn and almost stop at times. Now, if I loosen up the little tensioner here, that will make it fall a lot faster. But we don't want that, especially when you're first beginning. You'd preferably rather tighten that down to almost where it barely falls at all. And that will save you some backlash problems later on. Now, the thing about baitcasters, they're completely different in how you cast one as opposed to a spinning rod or a push button. When you push this button to release the spool, you can't just let it hang because line's going to start coming off just under the weight of your lure. So you have to stop it with your thumb. And then when you go to cast, when you pull back for your cast and you go to release, you release your thumb right when you get to about here or so on a side hand cast. Now, when you're first starting off with a baitcaster, preferably side hand cast is going to be your best friend. Overhand cast is something you'll learn later on. And the reasons why, on an overhand cast, if you release your thumb off the spool too early, then your line will shoot sky high and it will start to slow down and you end up with a backlash and you'll be frustrated. If you hold on too long and release too late, you duff it right into the water right in front of you and your spool's spinning at high speed and you backlash. So you want to avoid overhand casts. So don't cast straight overhand when you are brand new. And start with just short casts. I didn't cast very far, but just to get the technique down. Because not only do you have to release your thumb off the spool to cast, but when you see your lure about to hit the water, you have to stop it with your thumb again. If you don't stop your spool with your thumb at the end of your cast, what happens is the spool keeps turning, but the line isn't being pulled off, so it just balls up on your reel and you get a backlash. And all of these things will be quite frustrating for you if you're just getting used to it. And I do also recommend that if you're just starting off, that you use braided line. The reason I say braided line is because if you're using braided line, especially if you're using a high visibility color like I'm using in this ocean blue, if you're using high vis color, you can see it real easy and they're easier to pick out. So you don't spend all day trying to deal with monofilament, which can get pretty bad at times. Now, other than that, baitcasters are relatively simple. Not a whole lot to them that you really need to be concerned about any given time. I mean, we're not going to get into gear ratios and anything like that in this video. So again, when you first start, just short casts until you start getting the principle of it down. Then add a little more power to it. And when you start to get your comfort level up a little more, Just add a little more power to it. And then finally, you'll be making full distance casts. With any given bait casting reel, you're going to eventually start to realize what its limitations are on as far as the lightness of a lure you can use or how hard you can cast. You'll get a feel for it. That is the only way you learn bait casting reels. Like I said before, I can't just tell you how to do it and you go just pick up and you're perfect with it. You're gonna get backlashes and you're gonna be frustrated picking some out, but it happens to us all, especially when you're first starting. And there's nothing to be ashamed of in that either. But eventually, as your skill level grows, you'll start becoming a lot more confident and you'll be more accurate, and you're gonna notice that baitcasters really give you an edge over the other reel styles that you have out there. So hopefully these tips have been able to help you if you're new to bait casting. Let me know if you have any questions about bait casting, and I'd be glad to help you guys out. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. Catch you next time. Knew I should have had my chest camera on. I was gonna just stop and make a couple casts over this grassy stuff. Ended up with a little bass. Actually, it's a pretty chunky little bass. That's a good sized little bass right there. Not bad. Dang, I went to take a step and a small bass came up. Wasn't expecting that. That's how it goes fishing. They always strike when you least expect it. There, hit it again. Don't waste forever on this. Like I can't hit it again.